Good call.
Okay. And all right, we are now broadcasting live with another Tech Talks. And today we are talking about a cool tool called Jeopardy Labs that Nick has a fair amount of experience using. Super simple, straightforward, very usable tool for hosting Jeopardy activities in class. So
yeah, exactly. And I don't think we get to say that too often. So I'm always happy for an easy one. So just a quick thing is I love Jeopardy as a tool because there's something inherently engaging about games. You know, if you can get people to show up, that's always the trouble. If you can get people to show up, they're going to buy in. There's points associated with it. There's these low stakes that kind of keep people running. And I just think it's such a useful tool, especially when you kind of hit those lulls or everybody's burned out and you just need something to bridge a gap. That's what I love this for. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to go right into Jeopardy Labs, which is a browser-based tool. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to full screen. So what we're looking at right now is our first homepage that we get to. You can, from here, basically do whatever you need to do. So with all ed tech tools, you know, there's a free version and then there's a paid version. The benefit here, the paid version is $20 for a lifetime subscription. Once again, I don't think that's something we get to say very often. I personally have an account because it's $20 and then I've just got it for life. So I'm not here to, you know, promote this tool in that fashion. I'm not being paid, but it's like
it's noteworthy that it's a lifetime license because so many tech tools are all subscription based now.
Yeah.
And you never know when the subscription is going to go up. You never know when they're going to get bought out by a bigger company and rolled into some other product. So it is kind of noteworthy these days.
Yep. And one of the things to note about Jeopardy Labs is it's one developer who made this in his undergraduate course and at the UW and turned it into a little business. So it's been around for, I think, since like 2016, obviously shot through the roof during the pandemic. And that's when I got a hold of it. So first things first, what does it actually look like? So I actually have an example right here. This is the layout after you build or find, which we'll kind of get into a little bit later, a board. So you can select how many teams you have. So you can do as many as you want. I think one of the things to note is whenever you're doing it online, usually I go with individuals. So say I've got 10 people in the room, they would have their own team. In person, it becomes a little bit easier to manage small groups. People don't get left out. So that's just a caveat. And if you are doing a big class of like 30 people, they're all coming to a Jeopardy session, then you kind of have to feel out how you're going to set up teams and how you're going to stratify them into those groups. Once again, we'll kind of cover a little bit of that a little bit later. But for now, let's see, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people in the room, 6 including Caleb. So I would do 6 teams. If you are jumping into a board that somebody else has made, you can edit it. If it is yours, you can edit it. Basically, you can either make a copy or make changes as needed. You can download them, which I don't have a lot of experience with, but it's essentially pulling it off and making an offline version, and then embedding and sharing as you would like put in Canvas and things like that. So the layout is so simple that it's consistent pretty much across all of those boards. But the thing to note is super simple layout. Basically, you have titles at the top, just like standard Jeopardy, and then you can select which value depending on, you know, who chooses what. This is an example from a physics instructor who I know personally, Zoe, my partner. But in her case, if she's doing it online, you know, you put into the chat, you know, maybe Caleb would be the first person. Caleb, what
everything
would you like?
Energy for 200.
Everything energy for 200. You click in, it opens up a new screen, little animation, which makes it nice. And then depending on how you're doing it, you could use a buzzer. You could have them just put it in the chat if everybody's going to be doing points. If you are throwing,
smack their hand on the table.
yeah, you got a lot of options. But if you are doing it online and you're using the chat, I usually use a private chat. That way people don't see each other's responses. And then I can just quickly go through and give each team essentially a score.
Okay.
So this is the proper equation to calculate the energy stored by gravity. I don't know what it is.
Does anybody know the answer to that in this group?
All right, I think that's fair.
Okay.
So in this case, if somebody had guessed, say Caleb's number one, I could rename team one to Caleb, and I can do that at any time.
Okay.
Say Caleb guessed incorrectly.
I'm sure it would be incorrect.
No fault of your own.
Yeah.
But I can subtract whatever the current score is, and it does those calculations automatically. Or I can add whatever the score is, and I can keep track on this little leaderboard, and it will continually, depending on what question I'm at, jump through those. And then
Janine posted, she has an answer in the chat.
Okay.
PE equals MGH. Is that
Well,
true?
let's see. This is high school physics. Oh, yep, MGH.
Oh, hey, all right. Janine gets the points.
So here, Janine, Caleb, I'm sorry. Janine, you get your 200.
Nice.
And then obviously with the rules of Jeopardy, Janine would be the next person to guess or choose, I should say, a value. If I hit spacebar again, it should shoot me
Let's say
out.
it says escape to continue.
Oh, okay.
And then that one's blanked out.
And now that one's blanked out, I know, okay, I can kind of move on. So the actual layout and the navigation is super easy.
Mhm.
Now I figure it's probably time to kind of go into how to edit one of these because that's the part that you'll spend the most time in. So this link is essentially a static link, or you can kind of share it out. So if I ever need to grab that, I can share it through a wide variety of resources, or I can just pull that URL and then send it to somebody if they need it, or that's how I can get into it later.
Okay.
But let's do this. Let's jump in. Let's go to the build. First thing it's going to do is it's going to ask for a password. So this is how you'll be able to edit a game again if you don't have an account. So for example,
So the password associated with this one particular Jeopardy board that you're creating.
exactly.
Okay.
So
Super simple.
I'll just write test for an example, start building. And now from here, I have the ability to put in my categories and then start building out the actual questions and answers. So one thing to note is that I don't believe, so you can't add rows or columns over this default unless you've got the $20 paid account. Another thing to note is inserting images from your device, inserting math equations, embedding. These are the limitations of the free version. But in my case, if I've ever had to do a math equation, I've just written it out, just using standard type and not an equation editor. But it's pretty much simple as kind of running through, clicking into whatever area you're going to be editing in. You can change point values. If I click into one of those boxes, it opens up the question prompt, and correct response. Question prompt obviously would be, what's the question I'm going to be posing? Correct response framed in a question if you are going standard Jeopardy rules, but that would be whatever the student should be sending your way. And then you can fill out your board, and when you're ready, click save and finish. And now you can, like they say, bookmark the page, email the link to yourself, and then you'll essentially end up here next time you click on the link. If you need to edit it again, since I'm already been in it, it knows it's mine, but
Otherwise it would ask for that access password.
otherwise it would ask for that 4-letter test password that I put in. But you can kind of run through each and say, I start it and I only have 3 teams and I need to restart it. I can click menu in the bottom left, just to 6 teams, and then good to go. So you can make really quick adjustments on the fly, which I'm always a huge fan of. And then it's just business as usual. You get to jump through each of the different boxes as people kind of call out which one they want to focus on. And then you can add and subtract those points as necessary. You can also adjust points. Say you've got a final Jeopardy, and that could be just a PowerPoint slide or something like that that you pop up at the end. You can adjust these values that way as well. And usually in the case of final Jeopardy, if you are going by standard Jeopardy rules, I have them tell me what their bet is in the chat, and then at the end I kind of add it all up. Obviously that gets a little bit more difficult if you have a bunch of individual teams and that kind of thing. That's where you might need like some sort of notepad to jot things down, but it's Jeopardy, it's informal, kind of keep it pretty simple. I'm going to check the chat real quick to see where we are.
Jennifer says pictures for geology would be very visual, not always ADA compliant. So maybe accessibility is a question to discuss for this tool.
Yeah, and one thing to note is since it's on your end, the students wouldn't be able to use like a screen reader or anything like that.
Right. So if you're doing this in a Zoom session or in a classroom where it's projected on the screen, then there is no screen reader function available in that setting.
Yeah, so you'd have to provide that alt text or whatever context if it isn't
loud.
Yeah,
you'd have to say the categories for this one are X, Y, and Z. What number do you want? And then you read it out loud, which you should be doing anyway. As the Jeopardy host, you're going to read those things out loud.
Yeah, you got to put on your best presenter voice and really ham it up. And then you can kind of go through. And then I will say, so when you are in Jeopardy Labs, you can go to this browse function. And this is kind of a way to get around the 4x4 that it defaults you. So 4 options or question answers for each category. So you could search materials up. So it looks like it's pulling from my last. Oh yeah. Yeah, let's see what that is. So yeah, you can jump into Jeopardy Labs, search up a keyword, and then see what other people have done. All of the boards in the default or free version are publicly available. So you can jump in and take somebody else's material or just copy it and start a poll, or sorry, not a poll, start a board and game immediately from there, or you can edit it, make it your own.
A copy for yourself to edit.
Exactly. And you just run through the same process as building.
So anytime you build a free one, it automatically becomes visible to anybody using this tool.
Yes.
If you have the paid version, you can set them to private.
Okay. Exactly. Okay. And I will say there are so many of these boards. It's almost
it says 10,000 matching.
And I will say that just
action research.
That's the max, I think, for some of those results.
Okay.
They claim that they have 2 million games on here. I mean, the person who makes it doesn't delete any. So
sure.
I was actually able to find a game. So if you do forget what your URL is, which I did today, I was like, oh geez, what was it? I found one that I made about 2 years ago at a different institution for just like a professional development, get together. Hey, everybody, let's just do something, because we're, that team building aspect. So you can actually, if you click on tips in the search bar, gives you examples of how to type in and find things. And that's how I was able to find this. I was like, okay, I know I had a weird couple of questions that were pretty unique. And then I was able to figure out, I created it at least after January of 2020. And then, this is what I ended up making. And, you can put in little emoji pictograms, which I used consistently. So exactly. Lion King. So
nice.
There's all sorts of fun stuff you can do.
Ben's got a question. He's got his hand raised.
Yeah, this sure beats the heck out of the 2006 Excel spreadsheet I would make to try to do this. A lot more customizable and interactive. But I had a question about the asynchronous element. Would it, if you're embedding this in your Canvas course, would it act essentially as almost like a flashcard or a study tool, or is there more gamification that you could kind of build around this?
Yeah, I would say think flashcard or study tool.
Yeah. Exam review, something like that. Maybe after you've done it live in the classroom, then you would also make it available in Canvas for review later on if somebody wants to go back and test themselves.
And also so you can find it later.
Sure, that good point for yourself.
But yeah, and basically it's this same page just embedded in a box in Canvas. So it won't change too much about the actual experience, which you'd like that to be consistent. So
Sure.
great point. And I will say, when you are kind of doing it synchronously, it can be difficult to kind of navigate. And Ben just kind of reminded me of an element of this. It's talking about asynchronous, but with the synchronous element, it can be hard to kind of control those bigger groups and get responses. And if you are doing beat the buzzer kind of element, I used to use this thing called Crowd Buzzer, which is just a super easy, free tool that creates little URLs for your students to go to all in real time. So you can host a bunch of students, have them open up the buzzer on their phone, and use that to control responses, especially if you are doing that kind of more high stakes competitive element to it, which can be a little bit more engaging, but also ruin friendships. So keep that in mind. I did it with a bunch of medical students. I thought they were going to stab each other. So be warned. Sometimes it's
Be
better to
careful
do
with
friends.
competition and med students. That's a dangerous combination.
And I'll just put the link to this in the chat, since it's just a super easy buzzer tool. You can create a title
So,
and then send it out to people.
okay,
based
so
on that
just
game code.
explain how this works.
Yeah, well, here, I'll just put it in the chat and let's just do it together. So I would send everybody a link to CCG Buzz,
Okay. So I
which
open
will look like this.
CCG Buzz on my browser.
And I'd probably just send the game code, hey, 8CKS. I'll put that in the chat.
8CKS. All right.
And then I would have students copy that game code and join. Once they join, they can give themselves a name. If you do teams, you can control that. So, okay, I want, everybody who's, let's see, I might do Janine, Susan, and Angela in one team, because they're the first three on my screen.
Gotcha.
And Jennifer, Ben, and Caleb in the next team, since they're the next three. You can do it by last name, first name, all that fun
Let them
stuff.
pick their own team names, like some people like to do. Golden Monkeys and the Blueberry
Oh, yeah.
Kids.
Make it absurd. And then when they click join, it'll pop up on my host screen. Oops. Let's see if I broke it by trying to refresh. Yep, I broke it. So I'm gonna send a new code, because that's what I do. I like to break things. So new code. Let's give that one another shot.
Is it
QZV4. Let's make sure that's got set.
Okay, so I'm gonna join.
Susan brings up a good question. How does the host of the Jeopardy board remember what the correct answer is? You don't. From my experience, I always forget. So generally, I pose the question, have people send in their answers, and then I reveal, and then I go, okay, let's double check who got what, and then I tally it all right there in real time, because I can never remember. Okay, so it's populating now. So there we go. And if you had a team name, that would come up.
Okay.
And I would just make sure that matches what I've got on my Jeopardy board. And when, let's do this, QZV4, let's just add another one, QZ4. So if I jump to here and let's do this, click buzz.
Okay, so
I need to do this. There's one more element to this. So that's the list of students. And I need to jump over to, naturally. All right, let me pull up that page. So there's a couple of different pages that you can have access to. Always do this. So right now, I need to make sure that this is working right. So there is a host, there's a show. It's going to pull over the game code that I've got from my test board. There we go. And then There I am. Okay. So when somebody buzzes in, you'll see them pop up in this list. So there's Caleb, and it'll go in order. So I could then ask.
So whoever buzzes first is going to be at the top of the list.
Yep,
And then that's how
exactly.
you
And
figure
so,
out who gets to answer first.
and so you can tell you kind of have to have the right window open and make sure that you've got all of the things set up. So it does require a little bit of planning on the front end, but it makes it a little bit easier to kind of parse through, especially if you have a super long chat or a really big group. I've seen, say, groups of 100 use this tool.
Okay.
And say you're doing trivia, you could do it that way. Or, hey, buzz in
Gotcha.
for our Jeopardy board, I'll put you in.
Okay.
So,
Ooh,
that
Susan
kind of-
has an awesome idea. They have students build buzzers in Arduino on the Raspberry Pi, so they could create their own
Whoa.
buzzers out of electronics and then use the buzzer during Jeopardy Labs, which is kind of amazing. I love it.
It's an awesome use.
I've also, at my previous school, I had an instructor, I don't think they use Jeopardy Labs, they use something like it. And they just bought a package of plastic buzzers off of Amazon for like $10. They had 6 of them and they each had a different color on them, and they're just big plastic buttons. And you click it and it made a beeping noise. And that's how they moderated their Jeopardy quiz exams. And students loved it because it's a big red plastic button and it makes a noise and lights up. And that was a super simple, low-tech way of doing this.
And I will say, I do like the buzzer system just because it adds that little bit extra into the situation.
Jennifer says using rock hammers likely frowned upon. You probably don't need them smashing hammers to buzz in.
Well, I don't know. You could do like dog toys and have them smash them with a hammer.
Yeah, like
I don't know.
a squeaky chicken.
Yeah, make it weird. I do like that idea. The buzzer kind of adds this another element.
Yeah,
to it.
customize your buzzer to your field of study.
Yeah.
I like it.
Though, yes, rock hammers could pose a risk. So whether you're doing it online, in person, think through how you want them to actually give you the answer. And that's always something that you should consider anytime you're asking for participant engagement.
Sure.
How do you want them to actually relay the information to you? Do you want it to be a group effort? Do you want it to be an individual giving you their response so everybody has an opportunity to either succeed or fail? And in gamification, that failure ends up being a learning experience as well. So it's all low stakes. Just kind of thinking through those elements will make it a lot more successful. And with that, we've got about 3 more minutes, and I've gone through kind of a multitude of things. So I wanted to open up the room for questions, comments. Have you done Jeopardy before? Have you done the old school Excel spreadsheet or created a crazy PowerPoint? Does it seem useful? I'd like to hear those comments if you have them. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure. Ooh, combine like Family Feud. Are you saying, Jennifer, basically do a Family Feud style session in your class that you kind of go through materials?
I did I've done the older school versions using like Excel spreadsheets where I split, if I have an in-person lab, typically I have 24 kids. So I split, the room in 2 and then they had like each table has to go through kind of like they do in Family Feud where person at seat 1 will go against person at seat 1 from the other team. And then, we cycle through that way, hoping to get everybody. So there's not always just one person on the same team who wants to speak.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. No, that's great. And I can see how you're kind of thinking through how do you get them all to participate, especially since in that group setting when stakes are a little bit higher, one person might feel like they are responsible for making that answer and making the team succeed. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, we are about out of time. Thanks for sharing this one, Nick. It's super simple. In its way, it's kind of low tech just because it's such a easy to use, straightforward tool. But students love doing game show type things in class. Or they get competitive, they get excited, they work in teams, they create crazy team names. It's just a great way to do exam prep, to do checking, formative assessment, discussion builders, project
Yeah.
kickoffs. There's so many things you can use this for that I think are really successful.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. It's great. I love it.
All right. Well, with that, we are out of time for today. Thanks everybody for coming. Next week we are doing, I believe, grading rubrics. Is that
I
what's
think
next
you're
week?
right. Not as fun as Jeopardy Labs.
Not quite as
but
fun.
It has
A
its
little-
own charm.
A little drier, but we will both look at kind of some best practices for designing effective, useful rubrics, and then also we'll talk about the Canvas side. How does it work in Canvas? How do you organize them? How do you find them? How do you use them? So that should be not quite as much fun, but hopefully useful.
We'll have our own kind of fun.
All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. We will see you next time.
See
This
you
was
later.
really fun. Thank you, guys.
Oh, thank you for being here.